Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. Today we're going to talk about a tale as old as time, Beauty and the Beast, which is, of course, the tale of TYT running with a false narrative that's actually disproved, debunked, and destroyed in the evidence that they present to you in their actual video. And this revolves around the Robert Adams case, which I will get into in great detail after today's wonderful sponsor. So let me throw it over to the sponsor. Let's do that throwing motion, and then bring it back over here, and we'll talk about it on the other side. We're coming up on an election cycle, and what we've seen over the past few years, anytime the world order starts to get upended, the progressive left seems like they're going to lose their foothold, the censorship starts to come. They do not respond to defeat in any fair way. This is why it's really important that we get ahead of the problem. We join alternative social media platforms that actually work. This is one of the reasons why I partnered with Bastion. Bastion is a social media platform like no other. First and foremost, if you need to compare it to something, it's essentially a non-corporate version of Twitter fused in with YouTube without any of the censorship or any of that nonsense. It works through the blockchain. It doesn't require any personal information to sign up, so you don't have to rely on promises of security guarantees. You can comment completely freely without censorship, and on top of that, it has its own pocket coin, which is a currency tied to the app. And you get it by actually participating and using the app. And one of the great things is that you guys can actually get started really well if you click my affiliate link, join up, and just leave me 2 comments, and you will be gifted 2 pocket coins. Pretty impressive, pretty amazing, and I'm gonna throw this in on top of everything else. I will be providing you with the same early access on Bastion that you get if you're my patron, if you're with Subscribestar, and if you're a YouTube member, all just by you signing up, joining the app, and watching my videos over there. Pretty dope early access. You don't have to worry about the mid-rolls. Sponsor that costs you nothing and gets you everything. Basically, the anti-Thanos. So the title for the TYT video is Police Pull Up in Unmarked Car and Shoot a Black Man in the Back. And that is supposed to indicate to you that this is potentially racism. The police in an unmarked car just came up out of nowhere on this innocent black person and shot him in the back because the police are evil white racists who are in fact both evil white and racist. This is what your takeaway is supposed to be. This is why they identify the race of the person they are alleging is the victim, and that's really all you need to know, that the police were in an unmarked car, the car was unmarked, and they shot an innocent black man in the back who is definitely innocent and was definitely not doing anything that warranted being shot in the back. So throughout the course of this video, the Young Turks are trying to hide behind what I call strategic skepticism as they show some bad quality video, which is somebody with their cell phone filming a computer of surveillance video of the mall situation outside the mall. And this video actually ends up debunking everything they possibly say, and the Young Turks actually give away the game throughout the course of this segment. But without further ado, let's roll into the video.
In San Bernardino, California, police fatally shot a 23-year-old black man after pulling up in an unmarked vehicle.
So I just want to point out that this video was actually sent to me by friend of the channel and the creator of the best TYT mashups ever, Alf Benny. And when Alf sent me this video, he said the new Pretty Girl and Jank were making up stuff about this case. And I have to say, Alf Benny does not lie. Not only does he make great mashups, makes his own original music for those mashups, but this girl, actually quite nice looking. And that's not anything that's supposed to be a dig or anything like that. Her name is Jessica Burbank, and I just have to point out and be as factually fair as possible and give compliments where they are deserved. This is not a simping situation. I'm about to prove that she's just as bad as everybody else at the Young Turks, if not worse. This is somebody that used to work for Bernie, but credit where credit is due. She's kind of like the anti-Britney Venti, gives me those kind of vibes if you just look at her. Also very progressive, while the other is very conservative. I'm just saying, this is clearly her nemesis.
They exited the vehicle with their guns already drawn and within seconds shot him in the back as he was crunching down onto the ground to take cover from them, warning that this footage is graphic.
So even though I just complimented Jessica Burbank and I was being very kind and courteous, I have to point out that everything she's saying is like she's asking a question, which is an annoying habit. I don't like it. You guys have called me out for when I actually inflect at the end of a sentence, thus making what I'm saying a question. So I just want to say that is the case in this video. Also, she's leaving out a little bit of the background for Robert Adams, the 20 23-year-old man at the center of this situation. She's also leaving out why the police might have come out the car with their guns drawn. But honestly, I don't want to spoil that for you. We're going to play the video, and therefore, you can see exactly why this happened.
As he was crunching down onto the ground to take cover from them, to take cover from them, to take cover from them.
Okay, I tricked you. You thought I was going to play the surveillance video, but in reality, I have to focus on the fact that right here, Jessica's words betrayed her. She just said that he was trying to take cover from the police in this situation. Take cover. That's what she said, because even she knows, even if it's not a conscious knowledge, that this guy was up to no good. He was doing something very not good, and the Young Turks are inflaming this, and doing it intentionally so to drive outrage when this shooting was 100% justified. But don't take my word for it. Let's go to the video that the Young Turks actually showed.
Let's watch that interaction.
Now, if you can't figure out already without me telling you what's up with that footage, what's wrong with that footage, I'm going to break it down for you. But first, I think it's very important that we get a little bit of background information about what's going on in this case. Now, I know a lot of you think he's innocent because you saw his 18-year-old high school photo. Look at him in his graduation cap and gown. Looks totally great, but the thing is, he's 23 years old. There are more recent photos of Robert Adams that are available. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, because we have video evidence that contradicts it, he wasn't in his graduation cap and gown that day going to his graduation in the middle of July outside of this parking lot. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, and this argument happens to be true, that Robert Adams was running security for an illegal gambling ring, and he was actually guarding outside in the parking lot, and somebody called 911 saying there was a man with a gun outside, and they wanted police to come in. And let's also say that this video that we're looking at shows the cop car pull up slowly, and Robert Adams, being suspicious of this place that he's guarding being robbed, actually drew his gun, and you can see him draw his gun on video clearly and obviously. You would have to be an absolute buffoon or liar in order to not acknowledge that, and maybe, just maybe, this might be indicative of the police response. Let's also add into the facts of the case, if you'll allow me to enter this into evidence, I know the Young Turks is resistant to evidence, that they actually found the loaded gun at the scene. On top of that, they found the loaded gun at the scene in his hand, so he didn't even let go of it after he was shot and ultimately ended up dying. On top of that, again, if you'll allow me to introduce some more context to this situation, Robert Adams, convicted felon, meaning he was a felony prohibited possessor, thus he was possessing this gun illegally, and on top of that, he was out on parole at the time of the shooting. So, with all that context in mind, with the fact that even Jessica Burbank said that he was taking cover in this situation, finding a defensive position with a gun in his hand that he could have dropped in order to fire onto the police officers, possibly because he didn't want to go back to prison because he was on parole and he was guarding an illegal gambling operation, I would think that this shooting was justified. On top of that, the body cam footage is out, and you could tell from the surveillance footage, and you sync it up with the body cam footage, that they didn't even fire at him with the gun in hand while he was running away to a defensible position. They fired at him when he turned back toward the police officers, thus making him a threat, because, by the way, you can actually shoot people while you're running away from them. You point the gun behind you, that's totally possible. But on top of that, he was turning back to look at the officers with the gun at the ready, so obviously they were in a defensive position. Now, it's important to note, when I say that Robert Adams is running nowhere, I mean he's running nowhere. There's no door, there's no escape route, or anything like that. It's just a wall and cover behind the car. This is one of the reasons why the officers decided to take the shot, because he's going to a defensible position with the firearm, and that puts them at significantly more risk. You are not obligated as a police officer to let the criminal suspect get into the best possible position to do the most damage to you before you can defend yourself. But Jessica Burbank has an alternative theory. Jessica Burbank is going to tell us how things aren't actually as the video seems. Trust her, her. Just look at her. She's definitely trustworthy. Bernie Sanders campaign person.
The name of the 23-year-old man who was shot in that video is Robert Adams. The footage came from a nearby surveillance camera that caught the interaction at 8 p.m. in the parking lot of an illegal gambling business, according to San Bernardino police. Robert Adams' mother, Tamika Davila King, responded to the shooting. She said, "I could understand if he was a threat to them, but he was not a threat to them. He was running for his life."
So I just want to point out that they read the mother's quote as if it's an unbiased source, but they introduce what I like to call strategic skepticism into the police's argument that he was running security for an illegal gambling operation. In fact, he was. This is clearly and obviously true. That's why the police were called in the first place, and the Young Turks are pretending like that's not legitimate, but the statements from the mother, who definitely wasn't there, totally legit in every possible way.
And I think it's really important to stress that the police didn't pull up in a squad car. They pulled up in an unmarked car. It looked like it could have been anyone.
What we call these type of officers in the city of New York is DTs, because they drive around in unmarked cars that actually can light up if need be, but they're in full uniform in the car. And one of the reasons why this guy actually drew his gun and started moving towards this car is he probably thought that this was a rival gang or somebody coming to rob the place. And then when the cops opened up in full uniform with their flashlights, he realized they were the police, and then he tried to get away or run to a defensive position. Either way, clear and obvious threat. This guy draws his gun at a slow-moving car because he's ready to shoot someone.
And they got out with their guns already drawn and started firing within seconds of getting out of that vehicle. Let's just watch that interaction again of them pulling up in that unmarked car. It looked like it could have been anyone. They come out with their guns already drawn. You can see Robert Adams there. We have confirmation that the person who's with him on the scene was his best friend.
You could see Robert Adams there. All he's doing is innocently drawing his illegal gun to help protect the illegal gambling operation that he's running security from while he's out on parole. And then the car pulls up slowly, and then all of a sudden you're gonna see the worst argument in the history of argumentation from this lady.
It looks like the car could be anyone, and you'll see the officer that gets out closest to Robert has the really bright flashlight already on his gun. So you can imagine if that gun is being pointed at you with the flashlight on, it's gonna be really difficult to see the officer's uniform, their badge, to see if it's a police officer at all.
The way she describes the flashlight, you would think Officer Krillin came out and used a solar flare on this guy. That's not the case.
Has the really bright flashlight already on his gun. So you can imagine if that gun is being pointed at you with the flashlight on, it's gonna be really difficult to see the officer's uniform, their badge, to see if it's a police officer at all.
Yeah, that's right. The flashlight blinded him. It was the flashlight, and he was just scared of the light, so he had to scatter. That's just normal and reasonable, and definitely a probable explanation for Jessica Burbank, who is denying the fact that we can see him draw a gun on video. And obviously, if you're going to make the case that he was running because he was scared of the guns, but he couldn't see the uniforms and couldn't hear the police officers shouting verbal commands to him, which, by the way, they definitely did, and we'll get into that lie a little bit later, then maybe, just maybe, you're willing to buy anything. Maybe, just maybe, you're willing to buy Cenk's book that is set to come out September 2023 that he's been selling since May 2020. Where's the book, Cenk?
And it's probable that Adams had no idea that these were police officers. If anyone pulls up on you and gets out of the car with a gun, you run. The officer that's closest to Adams that had that flashlight, we believe is the one that first fired the shots. Police say that they fired the shots because Adam didn't follow their verbal commands. Now, Adams' best friend, who gave a first-hand account of what happened that day to CBS LA, said that the police did not verbally communicate with Adams at all during the deadly interaction.
So what we have the Young Turks doing right here is specifically and deliberately selecting the most unreliable, most untrustworthy witness account among many witness accounts that were available to them at the time in order to forward their agenda of being strategically skeptical of everything the police say. And by the way, the body cam footage is out, so you can hear the verbal commands on the body cam footage.
Or the officers' lives were in danger. One of the officers fired his gun, striking Adams.
So I need to explain how the body cameras work so you can understand why there's no audio up until the point where the button is pressed. The way body cameras work is that you essentially activate them, and then 30 seconds of video without audio before the button is pressed is captured, and then the audio is captured going forward. And you can hear, once the button is pressed, other officer on the scene is in the middle of issuing a command. Now, you can be a conspiracy theorist and say the officers didn't give any commands or anything like that, but when this officer pressed the button, simultaneously it was timed with the other officer just so they could get away with killing this black guy, that he was going to be mid-command yelling it out. I don't believe that. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's absurd. I think the multiple other witnesses that aren't his friend, who is a proven liar about details involving this specific case, proves otherwise. But again, that's why there's no audio for this portion of the body cam footage. But at the time that the Young Turks put out this video, when they filmed this segment, there were about 6 witnesses that heard the police shouting at him. He knew it was the police. That's why he was running. He drew the gun before he knew it was the police. That's why he had the gun out in hand, and therefore the police had the gun out in hand. He wasn't blinded by the flashlight. And yes, the police issued verbal commands for him to stop. He didn't stop, and they didn't shoot him when he was just running away to take cover at a defensive position. They shot him when he turned back towards the officers, as shown by this footage and shown by the body cam footage. You can sync it all up. I will link it in the description so you can see for yourself.
So we have the police saying that he was not following their verbal orders. I'm not sure how he could have been given any verbal orders within those few seconds, but in any case, someone who was on the scene says that there were no verbal orders given by the police.
Oh, and by the way, if you think maybe it's a little bit ambiguous, maybe it's just up in the air, maybe the best friend didn't hear the police shout commands, you can't just assert that he's a liar, Sean. Well, he also says that the police just left him to die and didn't even bother rendering care to him, and he actually watched him die on the street.
They hopped out, said freeze, they didn't identify as police, anything.
And Adam's cousin, who says he witnessed the whole thing firsthand, says that those officers never attempted life-saving measures after shooting Adams.
They didn't do CPR or anything on him. They just let him bleed out right there. I watched him take his last breath.
However, the body cam footage contradicts that.
See if they can get a trauma kit too in the next unit.
But body camera video police have since released shows those officers carrying Adams to an ambulance. Chief Goodman says police gave both men in the parking lot commands to stop, but only one of them listened.
So YouTube is being really sketchy with my channel lately when it comes to showing even censored versions of the footage. I linked the full footage in the description of this video, and I wanted to show you this because you have the guy saying that the police did not render aid, and then the body cam footage not only showing the officer tying up a tourniquet for the guy, but both officers carrying him, running him to the ambulance to try to get him aid. If he's willing to lie about something that is so clear and obvious on video to the press, then you gotta not believe what he's saying, especially when it's contradicted by disinterested third-party witnesses. So this is a Michael Brown situation where a friend that was nearby, that was a participant in the criminal activity, is supporting him by lying about the case to the family, and then we're all supposed to go off of this bad narrative. And of course, the Young Turks, without a hint of skepticism of what you should actually be skeptical of about what's contradicted by the video evidence, reports it like it's all even worse. They report it like the police are lying about everything, and they try to explain to you why you shouldn't believe your lying eyes.
So we have the police saying that he was not following their verbal orders. I'm not sure how he could have been given any verbal orders within those few seconds.
I don't even know how he could have complied with the police orders. I mean, they said stop, drop the gun, and he ran with the gun. How was he even possibly able to comply with that when he was doing the exact opposite after those verbal commands were issued? Also, how could the police have even got these verbal commands out so fast? Does sound travel faster than a human running? Is there something about the speed of sound being faster, significantly more fast, than a human person running through a parking lot? I don't know, because I'm Jessica Burbank and I used to work for Bernie Sanders.
Not sure how he could have been given any verbal orders within those few seconds.
I'm not sure how he could have even been given verbal orders in that time frame. It was just seconds. I mean, humans can run at a certain speed and sound travels at another speed. I don't know what the difference in speed that is. I don't know if sound travels much faster than humans running in that situation, but I just don't think it's possible. And if I had to guess, as somebody who worked for the Bernie Sanders campaign, I would say that feet running across the parking lot is significantly faster than sound can travel, and that's what I'm basing it on, because I'm Jessica Burbank over at the Young Turks with my expert analysis. It's actually not even possible that they could have even given the commands, because it took seconds for this encounter to unfold, and sound does not travel faster than people, obviously.
Police claim that Adams was armed and they recovered a gun on the scene, but in the video footage, we can see Adams pretty clearly. The police department nevertheless asked community members to please withhold their judgment on the situation until they have all the available facts and details. So to say that there's a gun on the scene and we can clearly see that Robert Adams wasn't pointing the gun, I'm also just not inclined to give the police the benefit of the doubt. I mean, we have everything on footage here from the surveillance camera.
Police claim that he was armed and a gun was recovered at the scene. And in the video footage, we could see Adams very clearly. Yeah, we can see him draw his gun very clearly. And even if you can't make out the gun, even if you're not smart enough to, freeze frame at this moment so you can clearly see the gun, you can also point out that he's clearly doing a gun drawing motion from his waistband, and this is very clearly on the surveillance video. This is a lot more likely an explanation than at 8 o'clock at night in broad daylight, him being blinded by a flashlight and him running faster than the speed of sound.
So to say that there's a gun on the scene and we can clearly see that Robert Adams wasn't pointing the gun.
So after deliberately misrepresenting what's available in the video, maybe she can't see it, maybe she's that delusional on this situation, she now shifts the standard to the gun needs to be pointed at the officers, because we all know drawing a gun, just not even a threat. Pointing the gun, and eventually you have to actually bury a bullet in the officer's shoulder, or maybe somewhere more lethal, in order for the officers to perceive it as a threat, and then to think about maybe contemplate shooting you in that scenario. Because honestly, the flashlight blinded him, and then he was running at the speed of sound, so like your voice, or actually faster than the speed of sound, so the voice couldn't catch up to them, because it's not even possible that they yelled verbal commands, because his best friend and criminal co-conspirator was lying on his behalf to the media. Therefore, we can't give the cops the benefit of the doubt. I mean, we're gonna lie and show this guy's high school graduation photo like Benjamin Crump, but we're not gonna give the benefit of the doubt to the cops in this situation, even though the video we're showing disproves what we say.
I'm also just not inclined to give the police the benefit of the doubt. I mean, we have everything on footage here from the surveillance camera, and when so many stories of officers planting evidence on the scene of a crime, it's just really hard to give police officers the benefit of the doubt when we're so aware of the widespread corruption in the police department. And I'm not sure what facts or details would change what we're seeing here on video.
Again, strategic skepticism from the Young Turks. You can see on the video him drawing the gun. It's obvious. He's a felony prohibited possessor. He's guarding an illegal gambling operation. Typically, people who do that do so with guns. The body cam footage ended up showing that not only was the gun not planted, but it was still in his hand when the police approached him, because he had his gun on the hand. Maybe they got Michael Bay to do CGI special effects to put the gun in his hand just to trick everybody. But she's giving all the benefit of the doubt to the felon based on the bad information that's contradicted by the very evidence that she's showing, because the felon's friend, who is his co-conspirator, lied immediately to the media and said other things that are clearly and obviously contradicted by the facts.
Yeah, so there's two different issues here. One is, were the police right to approach him? And two is, were they right to shoot him and kill him, okay? Or their right to approach him. Sure, they've got a report that it's an illegal gambling operation, and they even had a report that there was a black guy outside with a gun, okay? So the fact that it's an unmarked car, it's unfortunate, but if you just stop right there and they got out of the car and they said, put your hands up, and and went through a normal procedure, there'd be nothing wrong with what happened.
So Cenk right now is acknowledging more of the facts in this case than I almost ever see him do. He's like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess the cops had the right to be there. I mean, they did get a report about an illegal gambling operation, and they did get a report, specifically a call about a black guy with a gun in the exact same spot, matching the same clothes, and it was definitely this person in the 911 call. So I guess maybe they were allowed to approach in that situation. But here comes Cenk dropping the lies.
Right? And if they were super careful and they, the guy from, they shielded themselves with their car and etc. Sure, I get it. The guy might have a gun.
Now we've moved on to Cenk telling the police how to do policing better, because whatever job that you can possibly do, Cenk's going to tell you how to do it better. And apparently the cops should have used the car as cover, which is the cop on this side of the car would not have been able to do. But whatever, Cenk is going to tell you what you get to do is get out of the car and do a backflip over the car because you're possibly Spider-Man, and then use the car for cover, while this guy who drew his gun before you even got out of the car makes his decision on whether or not he's going to kill you.
In fact, in the video, when he pulls something out of his trouser, I can't tell if it's a gun or a phone.
So again, strategic skepticism in this scenario. You can tell if you would have done the freeze frame that he drew a gun out of his pants. You don't typically keep a phone in your waistband. I'm just saying, some people might. I don't know, maybe it's tradition over in San Bernardino, but most people keep it in a pocket. They might keep the gun in the waistband, number one. Number two, the gun was recovered at the scene. Number three, the person who alleges that he took out a phone was his mother. His mother is alleging that. You know who wasn't present on the scene? His mother. So Cenk is equating the mother's lie because she's concerned about her son and, has hired Ben Crump to sue the city of San Bernardino in order to get money based on this situation, with the evidence at the scene.
So cops are taught, if you can't tell, just kill the guy and be done with it. Well, they shouldn't be taught that. I think the answer should be the reverse. If you can't tell that it's a gun, don't murder the guy. But cops actually find what I'm saying outrageous.
Cenk, the problem that you're running into is that they could, in fact, tell that he was drawing a gun. In fact, they're trained to spot a draw, and this was the most basic draw they've ever been trained to see. If you look at any police training video, this is exactly what they tell you to look for. He turned away to shield the draw, lifted his shirt, and pulled out the gun. This is exactly textbook what happened. He had the gun in his hand. The police saw the gun. You're trying to add in strategic skepticism into this situation when we all know what happened here.
If there's a 10% chance that it's a gun, it might actually hurt me. And a civilian life is worthless, totally and utterly worthless to cops. So they're like, I don't get it. I don't even understand what you're saying. Why would I risk any injury to me if it's just a civilian life? We just shoot and we move on with our lives. I know, and that's the problem.
Again, it's not that civilian life is worthless to the police. If they let this guy take a defensive position and start popping off rounds, that puts more people in danger. In this case, they knew he had a gun. They saw him draw the gun. They were called because this guy had a gun in the parking lot. He happened to be having that gun illegally, and he was retreating to a defensive position, and they still didn't shoot him while he was retreating, even though he had the gun in hand. They shot him when he turned around, possibly contemplating whether or not he was going to fire on the officers. Not an outrageous thing to do when you're talking about a felon who's out on parole who might not want to go back to prison and have a gun charge attached to him while he goes back to prison.
So they shot him in the back. That's obvious. Look, cops constantly ask us to not believe our lying eyes.
Look, cops constantly ask us to not believe our lying eyes.
So it's actually amazing that Cenk Uygur said the phrase, "Don't believe your lying eyes." The police don't want you watching the video to believe your lying eyes, when this whole segment is them showing you a video of somebody drawing a gun before the cops even get out of the car, and them saying, well, maybe it was a phone. Maybe he just drew the phone out of his waistband. Don't believe that. Don't believe the gun at the scene or anything like that. Believe his liar friend and his mother who wasn't there. Don't believe the 6 witnesses, the 911 call, or anything like that. And then he moves on to one of the stupidest arguments ever.
If they had given him proper verbal commands, you can see the video, you can rewind, we can show it to you again. Why would he be walking towards the car? Why would he be so lackadaisical? He was lackadaisical for a long time. The only time that he started running was when they got out of the car with guns, right? And so if you gave the verbal commands that you were cops, do you think he'd just be lollygagging towards you guys? Right, like, oh, they're cops, I'm gonna walk towards them with a gun, okay? That is unlikely.
This must be one of the stupidest arguments Cenk ever made of all time, and that is saying a lot. So Cenk, who put in the title, The Young Turks, and they've emphasized this throughout the segment, that this was an unmarked car, are asking themselves why this guy would be approaching the car. By the way, he had a gun. They don't acknowledge that. He drew the gun as soon as he saw the car slowly driving, while he's guarding an illegal gambling operation, running security, and this unmarked car might be perceived as a threat. I know you don't acknowledge this, but the reason he walks up with the gun drawn to the car is because this is what we call a textbook counter ambush. He thinks that this is a threat. Maybe they're trying to rob the place, whatever. He's guarding an illegal operation. This is what he's supposed to be watching for, these kind of actions. So he's getting ready when he sees it's the cops, when he hears police, stop, get on the ground, drop your weapon, all of that. That's when he starts running. On top of that, this is likely why the police were called on him in the first place. Remember, they said there was a guy matching his description, it was him, with a gun in the parking lot. This is a mall parking lot, so likely another car pulled up at some point into this parking lot, and he drew his gun and began to slowly approach in the same way, and that initiated the 911 call in the first place. So yeah, Cenk, this makes perfect sense. Cenk is trying to make the argument that the police are saying they told him to stop from the car, which the police never asserted at all.
Okay, that is unlikely. Okay, and there's a witness that says, no, they didn't give any commands.
Cenk, at this point in time, there are witnesses that say that they did give commands, and those witnesses aren't his lying best friend who has been proven false multiple different times in multiple different stages of his testimony. By the way, his friend that was co-guarding this area did stop when he saw the police. He complied and the police didn't shoot him, they just detained him. So this guy must have just stopped randomly. He's like, nobody could possibly know that these were the police. My friend definitely didn't know that these were the police because no verbal commands, but weirdly, he stopped and surrendered to the police immediately.
And that's because they're taught, don't ever take a risk of a hangnail or a paper cut. Just shoot. Shoot him in the back, shoot him in the front, shoot him wherever you want. It doesn't matter. Just kill him.
Again, Cenk promoting the anti-cop hysteria, saying that the cops are just trying to shoot everybody. That's what they're trained to do. And obviously, this 100% most justified shooting of all time that you have wire to wire on video couldn't be more obvious even from this video. And then the body cam footage on top of that makes it an even more open and shut case. Cenk claims it's unjustified because remember, the guy's friend and co-conspirator, the co-criminal in this situation, says that the cops were bad people in this area. And of course, he said that to the media, so we definitely believe that.
Okay, so let's just get real on what's happening. So the shooting was obviously unjustifiable. If you said to me, I've said this 1,000 times, and a lot of Republicans will disagree. They'll say, no, Cenk, you're totally wrong. How dare you? That's stupid, that's naive, whatever it might be. If there's a guy with a gun, and so I'm assuming in that fact pattern that there is one, and he's running away from me, of course I wouldn't shoot him. Why would I kill a guy that's running away from me? But that's because I'm a normal, decent human being. But we train our cops to not be normal, decent human beings.
Again, they shot him on the turn back, not on the runaway, and he didn't drop the gun. So this guy was running to a strategically more defensible position. There was no way out, by the way. He was running towards a wall. So the only thing that he could have possibly been doing is running to a place where he could shoot with some cover, and he turned back towards the cops. He had the hand on the gun. This is the perfectly sensible, justified shooting. And Cenk saying, I wouldn't do it. I mean, I'm Monday morning quarterbacking. I'm watching this days later, leaving out all the key information, presenting the reality as if it's a hypothetical, while presenting the lies as if they're 100% verified. But I wouldn't do that. I'm Cenk Uygur. I could tell you guys how to be better police. Just hire Cenk Uygur as the police commissioner. Honestly, why doesn't California do that? Appoint this man to a position so he could teach them how to do police training.
We train them, just kill everyone that you view to be a danger. And oh, look at that. Usually they view black people to be a danger, specifically young black males.
So two things, white people are shot twice as many times as the police, so Cenk is wrong on his typically right there. And secondly, statistically, young black males commit the most crime by far and away. Young males in every single demographic commit the most crime, but young black males in particular are more criminal than all the other demographics in the United States of America. So wouldn't you know it, the people who are most likely to commit violent crimes get interactions with the police, and some of those police encounters turned out to be deadly when they're resisting arrest.
Right, this story has already gotten a lot of attention online. I haven't seen it be picked up by big mainstream media. The reporting that we have on the story, a lot of it came from local news in LA. And I think that's really interesting.
So Jessica Burbank is going to show us why she is an A+ first-class pick for the Young Turks, because she's going to reveal to you that she has no judgment at all whatsoever and put out an insane conspiracy theory because that's how she rolls. And it's all based on the premise that the local news is the only news that picked this up, and this story didn't go national. By the way, there is some national reporting about it, but the reason why the national news didn't pick this up is because he clearly and obviously had a gun on video, and they didn't want to blow this up to have it blow back in their face. It was obvious from the jump. There was no ambiguity that they could introduce into the situation for strategic reasons, so it didn't get the broad national attention that people were hoping for, and the cases when information is suppressed in the beginning typically do. But she's not smart enough to realize that, so she's going to invent a conspiracy theory for why this is the case.
Because it seems to me that the footage of cops shooting unarmed black men that gets posted all around mainstream media, they cover it on cable news, they cover it in print. It's usually these stories where it's really easy to blame this one cop as a bad apple, or a group of cops for, not doing their job properly. And what that does is it sacrifices the conversation and the narrative that as Jank said, police are trained to do this. And that's what we need to have a conversation about. Are we okay with the people that are supposedly tasked with keeping our public safe, supposed to be protecting their own life at the expense of everyone around them, really? I would say my answer to that question is no.
So the conspiracy theory that she came up with for why the national media, which is smarter than the Young Turks, didn't pick up on this story, it's not the fact that this story is totally garbage from the jump and it would be embarrassing for them, and everybody knew it from the jump except for the Young Turks, that it was embarrassing. Even the local news reports, by the way, way more skeptical than TYT, so they had to craft their own narrative by going to the family and Benjamin Crump, obviously unreliable sources, is because the national media doesn't hate cops enough. They only want to shine lights on stories where there's one bad apple and they can't say the police are trained to do this, blah, 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 even though everything from 2020 on has been nonstop the police pushing abolish the police, defund the police, all that nonsense. Every single anti-cop argument that you can make has been featured in mainstream media, but she thinks that the real reason they're not pushing it is because they're the real left. Because when you're an ideological extremist, when you don't know anything about anything, you always say, well, they must not be the real leftist position. We have the real arguments here. The media always bites on this story, and believe me, if there's any ambiguity introduced a little bit later into this story, the media will be pushing the same exact garbage that the Young Turks are pushing. It has nothing to do with this, they want to promote the bad apple, whatever nonsense. It's the fact that they have higher editorial standards than the Young Turks. Imagine being a company that has lower editorial standards than CNN or MSNBC. Well, the Young Turks, you're it. They also have better judgment from their anchors because they're hiring people that at least are anchor actors and have real writers behind them. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like this video, you can show me by leaving a like. Subscribe for more content. Follow me on all my social media. Support me via the support links in the description box of this video. This has been me talking about the Young Turks, covering for an obviously justifiable shooting. Till next time.